To what extent can a technical error sink a 7-time world champion like Lewis Hamilton in the middle of the race? And what role did Ferrari play in the disaster at Interlagos? What we are going to tell you today is not only a scandal within the Scuderia, it is a revelation that could completely rewrite how we understand the Hamilton debacle in Brazil. Stay, because what Vasseur discovered changes everything. The 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix was not just a failed race for Ferrari. It was a manifestation of structural collapse within the most emblematic team in Formula One. Interlagos, a circuit historically charged with emotions, turned what was an opportunity for recovery into a showcase of chaos, frustration, and chain errors. The atmosphere on the track was tense, marked by the expectation that Ferrari could finally consolidate the performance shown in some previous qualifying sessions. However, reality struck with a technical and emotional violence that few expected. Since Saturday, the warning signs were evident, but they were ignored or minimized by the team. Lewis Hamilton, who was still in the process of adapting to the SF25 after his star signing with Ferrari, was eliminated prematurely in Q2, being relegated to a 13th position on the grid that already anticipated an uphill Sunday. For someone with 7 world titles, that position was not only uncomfortable, but also symbolically humiliating. It wasn't just individual performance. It was a clear warning that the car had serious limitations when pushed outside of optimal conditions. On the other hand, Charles Leclerc did achieve a decent result in qualifying, taking 3rd place and showing glimpses of the potential that the SF25 seemed to have in the hands of an already adapted pilot. But that hope lasted just 6 laps. In an incident between Oscar Piastri and Kimi Antonelli, Leclerc was trapped in the chaos of the corner, being collateral damage with no possibility of evasion. Leclerc's abandonment was more than a loss of points. It was the collapse of the only piece of the puzzle that still maintained Ferrari's image as a contender. The most alarming thing is that both retirements were not the result of spontaneous mechanical failures or glaring piloting errors. They were the consequence of a sensitive car, extremely dependent on its aerodynamic balance, and erratic strategic decisions that compromised the team's competitiveness. Beyond the technical, the climate inside the Ferrari box became dense, almost unbreathable. The frustration of the engineers was visible, the body language of the mechanics was resignation, and the radio silences said more than any technical comment. The combination of 2 retirements, added to the fact that the team was left without points in one of the most important Grands Prix on the calendar, hit the team's morale deeply. And all this in a context where each unit of performance and each strategic decision makes a difference in a championship that is being decided by tiny margins. Ferrari, at the end of the race, fell to 4th place in the Constructors' Championship. More than a position in the table, it was a visual representation of the setback that the team suffered in Brazil. And while rivals like McLaren and Mercedes consolidated smart strategies and played to their strengths, Ferrari seemed to have lost its way in a single race. This specific episode at Interlagos, represents much more than a bad result. It is an exact photograph of the critical moment that the Scuderia is experiencing, trapped between its own technical promises, strategic errors, and the growing media pressure that accompanies Hamilton's every step in his new stage in red. The debacle in Brazil was, in essence, a public confession that Ferrari has not yet resolved its inner demons. And the worst of all is that the rivals now know it. In modern Formula One, the margins of error are microscopic. A small scratch on the spoiler can cost several tenths per lap. Structural damage to the flat bottom can turn a top-of-the-line car into a completely uncontrollable one. But what Ferrari revealed after the Brazilian Grand Prix was not just a technical problem, it was a confession of extreme fragility that exposes the SF25's most critical vulnerability, its absolute dependence on downforce. And most alarming, the loss was not small. Ferrari team boss Frédéric Vasseur admitted that Lewis Hamilton's car had lost between 35 and 40 points of downforce. To measure that figure, you have to understand the context. The SF25 is designed as an integral package, where each aerodynamic element communicates with the next. The front wing, the floor, the flow edges, the diffuser. Each piece is vital to the overall balance. When the floor was destroyed following the incident with Colapinto and the subsequent roll on its own broken wing, the car completely lost the structural coherence of its airflow. Ferrari tried desperate maneuvers to compensate for the damage. They adjusted the angle of the front wing on lap 14, looked for minimal changes to the tire pressure, and even assessed the feasibility of continuing despite the consequences on the engine. But no measure was enough to contain the disaster. Hamilton, from the cockpit, communicated with a voice full of concern. He reported that the car was crazy unstable, describing it as if it were about to go off at every turn. In the telemetry, constant steering wheel corrections and an obvious loss of speed were observed in all high-load corners. Sensors showed an abrupt drop in pressure on the front axle, confirming that the car had lost its aerodynamic anchor. The SF25 had gone from precision tool to rolling hazard in just 2 turns. What makes this situation even worse is the fact that Ferrari did not immediately detect the extent of the damage. There were moments during the first laps when they insisted to Hamilton from the wall that he could continue, that he should try to bring the car back to the rhythm. This disconnection between the pilot and the technical team reveals not only a communication problem, but also a lack of adequate protocols to measure structural damage in real time. In a team like Ferrari with cutting-edge resources, these types of strategic lapses are unacceptable. Vasseur, with a candor unusual in F1, justified the decision to retire the car. "I'm not sure it made sense to continue racing the car like this, risk damaging the engine or compromising it for other races. We take the penalty, stop the car and start from scratch." This statement not only showed the seriousness of the damage, it also represented an unexpected narrative turn for Hamilton's project with Ferrari. In his second race with the Scuderia, the Briton was the victim not of a personal error, but of a systemic failure. The SF25 is effective, but deeply delicate, and here a worrying crack opens. Because if a car loses its ability to perform after a minor incident, if it cannot maintain its balance with minimally damaged ground, then we are not talking about a high-performance car. We are talking about a brittle car. Rivals know it. Engineers know it. And now, after Brazil, the world also knows it. This technical secret did not only affect Hamilton. It also calls into question the stability of the SF25 design for the remainder of the season. Can Ferrari guarantee competitiveness when the slightest friction turns the car into dead weight? How many more points are at risk if this pattern repeats? The scandal is not the damage. The scandal is that Ferrari knew it and silenced it until the disaster was irreversible. The SF25 technical debacle was neither an isolated accident nor an unexpected failure. It was the direct consequence of 2 key impacts that occurred in just 2 laps. Both incidents, apparently separate, actually form a single narrative thread. A fatal sequence that broke down Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari from the first minute of the race. They were not spectacular crashes, but they were surgically destructive. To understand the true extent of the damage, each contact must be analyzed precisely, because they were the ones who lit the fuse of the disaster that ended up revealing the car's structural flaws. It all started in the first corner of the Interlagos circuit, that famous sector known as the Senna S. Lewis Hamilton, who had started from 13th position, was trying to make up ground after a disappointing qualifying. Traffic was heavy, the track was still cold, and the margins were tight. Carlos Sainz, now at Williams, was just ahead and in full defense of his position. When facing turn 1, the 2 drivers converged in a space that was not enough for both of them. Sainz's Williams made contact with the left side of Hamilton's Ferrari. This first impact was more serious than initially perceived. Although at first glance it seemed like a light touch, the consequence was immediate. Sainz damaged his front wing while Hamilton was pushed to the outside, falling several positions. But the real problem was not the visible damage, but what that contact generated in the dynamics of the car. According to data revealed later, the impact caused a microfracture in the lower floor area of the SF25, which altered the lateral load distribution and began to compromise the balance of the car, especially during high-speed braking and cornering. The car was no longer the same after that corner. And that was just the beginning. Aware of the situation and determined to make a quick comeback, Hamilton did not lift his foot. On the next lap, fate placed him behind Franco Colapinto, the young Argentine at the wheel of Alpine, who was coming off a difficult Saturday. Colapinto made a braking error in the last corner of the circuit, leaving slightly out of position and creating a window of opportunity for the Ferrari. Hamilton took advantage of the moment and took slipstream on the main straight. But just when he decided to change lines to execute the overtake, Colapinto moved at the same time. The touch was inevitable. What happened next was the final piece of the puzzle that shattered SF25. The front wing of Hamilton's car partially detached upon contact, and as there was no time to avoid it, he ended up passing under the car itself at high speed. This fact, almost unheard of under normal conditions, caused massive damage to the floor of the car. The bottom plates, which formed the heart of the ground effect, were completely compromised. That moment sealed Ferrari's fate in the race. From that moment on, the car was simply unmanageable. The front end became floaty, the rear end became unstable, and the airflow that should be channeled under the SF25 was completely disturbed. Hamilton reported over the radio that he felt the car was going to crash at any moment. The telemetry confirmed it: excessive oversteer, outdated car reaction times and loss of grip in all sectors. It was a fight against a machine that no longer responded. What you think of all this? Leave me in the comments.